Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Our today's seminar will be about zero discharge of hazardous chemicals, roadmap to zero, which you know for sure as ZDHC. So we'll be talking about what it is, what's the reach of the program, the goal, the mission, and the vision. Thanks again for being here. And just about us, for any people who may have joined for this webinar, just a word for all the people who are joining now. If you missed any of the previous seminars, they are all available online in our website, www.pantareiwater.com. So you can find those webinars online. We have been talking about several topics. And then just a little introduction about Panta Rei. Panta Rei is an Italian company, which you may know. We are focused on the water and wastewater treatment for textile industries, and we have presence basically in all continents. We have been working for this market for 12 years. It will be 13 years this month, because this month Panta Rei will be 13 years old. And many of our engineers have been working in this sector even longer, even 15 to 20 years. We are also a certified ISO company. So we are striving to give the best quality to all our customers, to give only top quality products, top quality service, top quality technologies, having sustainability as a guideline. And you know, we're also part of Roadmap to Zero. We are contributors of ZDHC program, and we are also accredited training providers. We have hosted some in presence, let's say, seminars in Bangladesh mainly. We are going to have more seminars coming this year. Of course, due to the current situation, we have yet to schedule these seminars because, of course, we still don't know when we'll be able to travel. So more seminars will be coming, especially in Bangladesh, Indonesia, and Pakistan. And we will be able to give you all the information as soon as this situation with the coronavirus is handled. This is the webinar schedule. I will write in the chat our website so that if you missed any of them, you can go to our website and find the information about the past webinars, which is already available online. So you can watch the webinars there if you missed anything, or if you want to watch again something that was very interesting for you. The first webinar was about the ETP lockdown measures, because on April 23rd, we were basically, all of us were home, and because it was the peak of the coronavirus situation, mainly here in Europe. So in this seminar, we talk about what to do with the ETP when everything is on lockdown, how to keep the microorganisms alive, or what to do if those microorganisms died and you have to reactivate the ETP afterwards. So what are the best measures and the most economical measures? Then on April 30th, we talked about fluff removal and heat efficiency on textile ETPs, because of course, many times with very easy pretreatments, you can have huge savings. Then on May 7th, we talked about the biological process in the effluent treatment plant, because as you know, the biological wastewater treatment plants is the main unit, is the core of the wastewater treatment applications, in most of the applications. Then on May 14th, we had the last of the first series of webinars, which was about ETP equipment maintenance. And this was very interesting because in this webinar, you could see how to do the maintenance and what are the troubleshooting for the main machines of the ETP, namely the pumps, the dosing pumps, and also the blowers. Then today, we will be talking about the zero discharge of hazardous chemicals, the roadmap to zero. Next week, we will be talking about the membrane bioreactors, then about sludge treatment solutions, and finally, about water and brine recovery systems. Well, to start with the ZDHC presentation, we just want to say that this dates back to 2011. In 2011, Greenpeace, the non-government organization, which you all may know, they launched a detox campaign for the clothing industry. And many major brands in the fashion and apparel and also the footwear industry adhered to that movement. And then the Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals Roadmap to Zero Foundation was born. The goal was to reduce toxic emissions. And one of the first documents that was launched was the Manufacturing Restricted Substances List, the MRSL, which many of you may know, which tell you about the substances that are banned from intentional use in the textile manufacturing and in the footwear manufacturing. What are the objectives of ZDHC? Well, basically, the guideline that guides ZDHC says that we want to protect the planet by reducing the industry's chemical footprint. That means that we have to work hand in hand with the entire value chain. So what is the value chain that we talk about? Well, the value chain are the global brands, the chemical suppliers, the manufacturers, so the manufacturing units, and organizations that share this vision in order to create a new way forward together. The mission was to enable the brands and retailers in the textile, apparel, and footwear industries to implement sustainable chemical management best practice across the value chain, so for everyone. And the vision was the widespread implementation of sustainable practices. So the key words here are collaboration in order to have best practices through all the value chain, to work together for a common goal. And this is the manifesto. We believe in the preservation of our planet and that production and nature can coexist, that there is a new way forward, a new way to do things without harming the environment and at the same time creating work, creating wealth in all the countries where the companies are present. We unite. We unite means that we connect people in a holistic effort, building strong collaborative ecosystems, changing the model together. We share. We share being accessible and open, sharing the knowledge of the common good, spreading the great ideas and the best practice to everyone. We do. We do means reinventing how products are made, making safe chemicals the norm. We act. We act means that people will always follow fashion. People will always love new products. So let's do this better. Let's do this in a new way so that the environment can be also protected. These are some of the main signatory brands. So as you can see, we have Adidas, United Colors of Benetton, Burberry, Stone Island, H&M, C&A, Nike, Puma, Marks & Spencer, Louis Vuitton, Levi's Strauss & Company, Hugo Boss, among many others. Then one of the main documents that was released was the Manufacturing Restricted Substance List, which you might have heard about. So instead of trying to remove the hazardous chemicals after making a product, so we're talking about a waste, right? Because after we use the chemical inputs, we have an output. So it makes more sense to manage the chemical inputs from the very start. So if you do not use any harmful chemical, any heavy metal, let's say, in the manufacturing process, this means that you will not have it at the output. So we solve the issue from the very source, from the very beginning. So this is the approach. And this is why the MRSL was created. Also, it was created in order to help the companies that formulate these chemicals by offering guidance so that they know which products they can avoid during the manufacturing process in order to be more sustainable, in order to be more environmentally friendly. The suppliers benefit, so the manufacturing compounds benefit, because they know what to do. So they know what to ask to the chemical formulators. They have a common guideline. This is the image of the document, which you may have. This is very important. In case you need any information about this, you can also download this information from the Roadmap to Zero website. I'm going to write it in the chat so that you can all see it, where to get the information from. I have sent it now. Okay. And now, this is also the ZDHC principles and procedures, because some people were asking, okay, so what are the principles and procedures? How did you elaborate this manufacturing restricted substance list? So this way we're giving you the answer. I mean, these were the procedures used in order to elaborate this manufacturing restricted substance list. This is part of the chemical management. If you're part of ZDHC, if you are producing for brands, for buyers that are part of ZDHC, you may have heard about the chemical management system, which this supports the worker safety. And there, ZDHC hosts also several seminars about the chemical management in order to protect the workers, in order to give the industry a guideline of how to handle all the chemical substances that are involved in the process. And this is part of a two-part process, the other being the environmental management system, where the wastewater comes in. There is the chemical management system framework, which is also downloadable through the Roadmap to Zero website. This is available, or if you have any specific query, we can also send you documentation through our agents. And so why are we regulating the inputs? In order to have better outputs, safer, cleaner outputs for producers, for the people, and for the planet. So in this case, we're going to measure indicators such as wastewater, the sludge, and the air quality in order to validate the work that is being done, in order to validate also the chemical inputs that we're using. So now we're coming to the wastewater. As you know, Panta Rei is a ZDHC contributor. We are a solution provider. We're a solution provider, in this case for wastewater. So we're focused on the wastewater, because as you already know, there are large quantities of water that are being used to manufacture all the clothing, all the footwear products. And then the wastewater gets released. If we do not treat properly the wastewater, then it can be a threat to the environment. So one of the main goals of ZDHC has been making cleaner wastewater through a collaborative approach. These wastewater guidelines have been drawn with the support of the brands, of the manufacturing companies, and also of all the associates, the laboratories or the solution providers like us, in order to, so that everyone can give an opinion about these guidelines. We have these guidelines to have a standard requirement in the global apparel, textile, and footwear supply chain. This means that also universities, laboratories, as we said, brands were involved in the manufacturing of these guidelines. These are the wastewater guidelines, version 1.1, which was released last year, because from 2015-16, we had been working with some guidelines. Now there are some new guidelines that were released in July last year. And basically, the limits for wastewater are mostly the same. There are some new approaches regarding the sludge generation, but the main wastewater parameters are the same. And this is a very important part. You can here see the table of the wastewater guidelines that you may know, which are the foundational, progressive, and aspirational guidelines. These are the main parameters. If you go to the document, you will see many more, but these are the main ones. So whenever you hear about ZDHC saying we have foundational, progressive, and aspirational guidelines, this is what we are talking about. So we will look deep inside this table. These parameters, what are the main parameters? Well, we have the temperature. As you can see here, we have a delta, so a variation of 15 degrees Celsius or maximum 35 degrees Celsius for the foundational. So many customers, this is very important, ask, okay, but we are saying that the discharge limit is 35 degrees centigrade. So if that's 35 degrees centigrade, but the river temperature is 28 degrees, for example, because we have had this situation in Bangladesh, but also in Latin America, where the river water was not very cold, right? So they say, okay, but my production, the discharge will be 40. This will be in line with the foundational guideline, and it's okay. Why? Because if the discharge body, in this case a river, the temperature is 28 degrees, and I can discharge 15 degrees more, that means that I can discharge up to 43 degrees Celsius, and I will be compliant with the law for the foundational level. In case of the progressive guideline, the variation is 10 degrees Celsius or max 30. But for example, if the river temperature is 28, I can discharge even 38 degrees Celsius. So this is important because this gives you more flexibility. Because if here in Europe, maybe if many rivers have cold water temperature, then of course the limit would be 35. But in this case, for the countries which are warmer, there is more flexibility by giving this delta opportunity. Then there are the total suspended solids, which you already know. You have limit 50 for the foundational, 80 for the progressive, and aspirational for 40. We have the COD, which is 150 for foundational, 80 for progressive, and 40 for aspirational. Normally, after a biological wastewater treatment plant, you will be compliant with foundational COD discharge, which is 150. For some plants which are very performant, sometimes they can even achieve progressive guidelines with the wastewater treatment plant, with the traditional wastewater treatment plant, but normally we have 80 value after ultrafiltration or after MBR treatment. And then finally, the aspirational value is 40, which is what you get normally after reverse osmosis or even after MBR if it's a lower load, for example, for a washing facility. Another parameter that we have is total nitrogen, which is 20, 10, and 5 respectively. So this is total nitrogen. We can get an idea of the total candle nitrogen. Mostly this is a concern when you do printing, you will have higher total nitrogen values because you can use urea in the system, and that's where the nitrogen is coming from normally when you have higher values. The pH is the same for all of the levels, which is 6 to 9. And then we have the color units. The color units are in meters at -1. That's wavelength. It's 753 for foundational. Roughly speaking, it can be around 150 units of platinum cobalt, roughly speaking, because there is no actually a direct correlation. So platinum cobalt units and wavelength units are different. There is not always a correlation that is universal. So this needs to be tested for each single customer. And we have the values here for foundational, progressive, and aspirational. When we see in the aspirational column, color 211, that is basically almost transparent water. So the platinum units cobalt, that could be color maybe less than 40, less than 30, maybe. So it's a very transparent wastewater. So this is why it needs to be taken into consideration. Then the BOD 30, 15, and 5. After a very good ultrafiltration or a very good MBR treatment, sometimes you can get 5 too. But normally after a reverse osmosis treatment, you can get something like BOD 0 even in the aspirational level. The ammonium 10, 1, and 0.5. Phosphorus 3, 0.5, and 0.1. AOX, they are adsorbable haloids. For example, you are talking about here chlorine, bromine, and iodine compounds. For example, you can get organic compounds that have chlorine, bromine, or iodine. So this is where they are coming from, because if you have a high total organic carbon and you have also a lot of chlorides, for example, coming from sodium hypochlorite and the reaction between the organic matter, you can get these parameters. This is the compounds, this is where they come from. Then we have oil and grease, 10, 2, and 0.5. Phenol, 0.5, 0.01, and 0.001. When you do a very good oxidation process, even after a traditional biological process, you can get even progressive or even aspirational levels without any problem. And then the coliform bacteria, which is 400, 125. Of course, normally after an ultrafiltration system or MBR, you have for sure bacteria less than 100, because bacteria do not pass through the ultrafiltration or through the MBR. And of course, they do not pass reverse osmosis. So after reverse osmosis, you will have basically 0. This is a diagram of the wastewater cycle in the production units. So here, what you can see is that you have the process chemicals and then you have the raw materials that go into the factory. You have the water for the preparation. So in this way, you can see that you have the raw wastewater at the inlet. This can be the river water that you use. It can be the groundwater, and you mix it together with the raw materials, the fabric basically, plus all the chemicals, and they go into the factory. After you have done your production, after you have done your productive cycle, then you will have your raw wastewater. You have your raw wastewater that goes into the ETP. And here from the ETP, you will have the discharged wastewater that can go to the river, to the channel, to a lake, to the sea, and then you have the sludge. Of course, the new guidelines are talking about sludge too, because it's not the same having biological sludge or chemical sludge. Because when you do a chemical physical treatment, you get a much larger amount of sludge, which is also chemical. So it's not organic sludge. If you do a biological process, you will get a completely organic sludge with safe disposal. And the wastewater can be discharged. One very important thing that we have to talk about here is that we are talking about zero discharge of hazardous chemicals. That means respecting the guidelines. We are not talking about zero discharge liquid, zero liquid discharge. Zero liquid discharge is a different issue, but this is not where we're aiming for here. I mean, here we're talking about the discharge of toxic effluent. So if you do a proper treatment, you will not have any toxic substances going into the river. So you will not harm the river, because the water quality will be in line with what the river water used to be. So this is very important to mention. And after we have talked about the guidelines, we have to talk about the gateway. So because if you are compliant with the guidelines, there is a gateway. There is an online platform which is called the ZDHC Gateway, which is where you can put the information and it will be accessible to all the companies who are part of ZDHC and who have manufacturers that are producing in the textile and footwear apparel industry. This is the way to concentrate all the information in one single site, the gateway. Many of your chemical facilities may be familiar with this already, and maybe you're already using it. How do you benefit? In this case, most of the participants to this webinar are suppliers, right, to the brands. So how do you benefit from this gateway? Well, you know, sometimes tasting the wastewater can be an issue because there is a lot of bureaucracy involved, and maybe you don't know how to do it, and maybe different brands were asking different things. But in this way, if you go to the gateway, there will be a one stop, because you can load the information there and it will be available for everyone, and there is a single standard for everyone. So with this, the brands, for example, that we saw before, Nike, H&M, also all the Intex group, DNA, or whoever, can see the information from all their manufacturers, from all their suppliers in a one single place. So they are not going to be asking you, give me this information 3 times, because maybe one supplier, one brand will come to you and will ask you for the results, and this way the other brands don't have to ask you the information because it will be already in the website. So you have to do it only once. So you don't need to respond to each and single brand. You can give the information and verify data, because also the accredited laboratories have access, so they can verify the data and say, okay, this supplier, this company is giving right information, you can upload it and it's verified. And you can see what your inputs and outputs are, because here you can see also how you are doing regarding the chemical process and the MRSL. It will be in this same page. Any further information that you need, you can find in our website, www.pantareiwater.com and www.roadmap20.com. You can find the documents regarding the wastewater guidelines, the MRSL, the procedures, and also the public display portal, because there are many companies that want to make public the results, because many of them are getting very good results with the wastewater treatment, and they can make it public also for the brands. So you can get this information here. So if you visit here, you can get all the information. So this is our presentation. Now we will read the questions that you are having in the chat. We will start reading the questions. So we have the supply, they're asking about MRSL. So for all the information about the MRSL, I will encourage you to visit the site roadmap20.com and to get the file about the MRSL, because it's very clear in the file, all the procedures. You are going to be able to get a lot of information about the MRSL, what are the limits, what are the substances, and about the limits. Another question about the pH, should be 6 to 9 for all categories. Yes, foundational, aspirational, from foundational to aspirational is 6 to 9. About biochemical sludge, well, about sludge disposal, this is also a very good thing, that in the wastewater guidelines in the document, you will see information about the sludge, because, you know, it's different to dispose chemical and biological sludge, right? Because in the chemical sludge, you may have some substances such as aluminum, or the sludge can be coming from the tannery industry. So it's a more concentrated sludge, let's say, in terms of metal. So in this case, there are different limits applicable. Whereas for the biological sludge, it's safer in the meaning that there are no heavy metals inside. About the ZDHC test, yeah, normally 6 months or once a year is the normal time that is required for the testing. So we see another question here about sludge burning. Yes, about sludge burning. Yes, actually, some companies, what they do after the dehydration of the sludge, which can be done with several techniques, for example, with filter press, with centrifugal unit, with belt press. Well, you can dehydrate the sludge, and after this, it can be burned as biomass. So this is, of course, a possibility. Another question about the presentation. It will be made available in our website. So please make sure that you visit www.pantareiwater.com. So next week, you will be able to see this presentation online. We have another information here. Yes, 6 months to twice a year. Yes, this is the requirement from ZDHC. And it can vary, of course. Some buyers may have some different demands, but normally this is the normal time, 6 months to 1 year. What if the limits from ZDHC and local government are different? Well, of course, we are trying to make these wastewater guidelines about guideline also to make an input to worldwide. And normally, if you are compliant with the ZDHC guidelines, you will be compliant also with the local requirements. Now, about the presence of flocculants or inorganic flocculants of the sludge, yes, this is one of the things that we were addressing. If you have chemical sludge, then it can be treated as a special waste because you have the metals. And this normally does not happen if you have a purely biological sludge. Now, about controlling the color parameter to meet the ZDHC standards, yes. In the ATP, in the conventional ATP, yes, of course, we can use organic decolorants to reduce the value color. And stay tuned because we are doing also research and development in terms of color removal. So we'll have news about this too. Now, with the gateway qualification, what is the audit platform? Okay, for the gateway qualification, for this is something that each factory needs to talk about with their buyer for the ZDHC status so that they can collaborate. This is something that needs to be done together. They can with the ZDHC Foundation or through the brands too. So for all this information, it can be made available in the website roadmap20.com. So if you want to be part of ZDHC, or if your brand, your buyer is already part of ZDHC, they can give you more information about the implementation hub. It's called like this also, in order to send all the information online. So we encourage you also to go to roadmap20.com. You will see a lot more information, and you will be able to download also all the guidelines from the chemical management to the wastewater treatment. And there are links there too to the ZDHC Academy about the seminars for wastewater management, for wastewater management, and also for chemical management. So there's a huge information available there. So now, just how to avoid the dead sludge floating in clarified tank. Well, this information for the utility about the sludge, we encourage you to go to our website to see the presentation that we had about also the biological process, because this is related to the biological process. So we had the webinar number 3, where you will have a lot of information about the biological process and the sludge. And this is available on webinar number 3 on our website. It's already online, so you can check it out. It's already available. Okay, we have a question about total nitrogen and TKN. Okay, yes, TKN is total killed nitrogen, which is normally the ammonia, nitrogen, and organic nitrogen. And the total nitrogen is the TKN plus the nitrates and nitrates. So when you have the nitrates plus the ammonia and organic nitrogen, you have the total nitrogen. For controlling the total nitrogen, you normally do the nitrates plus the TKN, and you get the total nitrogen. About the training, there will be training for Bangladesh. Yes, there will be additional training this year. For ZDHC, there will be a seminar on wastewater management. We still have to define the date because, of course, we do not know yet when we will be able to travel. So after we have this information, we will share it with you. And we will send you all the information about the inscription to these seminars and also costs. Because of course, when we do a wastewater seminar through ZDHC, which we are part of, then you get also a certificate which is valid worldwide, and all the buyers can recognize the certificate. So once again, this presentation will be available next week. I will write again the www.pantareiwater.com, research and development. And you will be able to watch the webinars there, not only this one, but also the past webinars. So thank you everyone for being here today. Our next presentation, don't miss it, it's gonna be very interesting about membrane bioreactors, the MBR treatment. This will be next week, same time, through this Zoom conference. Please stay tuned for any further information, and we really hope to see you next week. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. Thanks again. Please stay safe, take care. Thanks again, and see you soon.